The new Captain America movie obviously left a lot to be desired. Everyone seems to be in agreement that this movie was a massive disappointment and a huge step down from the previous 3 Captain America movies. Am I right? Nobody actually doesn't think that, right? Right? For me, it was more of a disappointment because I grew up loving the Captain America movies and loving the character of Sam Wilson as the right-hand man to Steve Rogers. And it was less of a disappointment due to me actually thinking this movie was ever going to be good in the first place. First off, Marvel is in its flop era, and they haven't made a good movie since Endgame outside of these 2 bangers. Secondly, this movie's production was a total disaster, where they completely rewrote the script after filming the whole thing, and they added new characters, took some characters out, just all around a total failure on the production side. And lastly, the fact that this movie wasn't ever going to be about Sam Wilson, who is,
Captain America?
the title character.
Wait, how is this movie not about Captain America? It's called Captain America.
It's so bad. This is a sequel to The Incredible Hulk, starring Edward Norton. Why? With Captain America forcibly jammed into the Hulk-sized hole in the script. I mean, I guess he wouldn't be jammed in. It would be more like loosely bouncing around. But the fact that the entire plot is focused on characters introduced with and tied to Hulk make it so the character of Captain America has nothing to do in this movie.
His own movie.
From the beginning of the movie to the end of the movie, his character is in the same place. What was the point of this movie? Oh yeah.
Money.
The problem is, they already told a great story about this Sam Wilson in the Disney Plus original series The Falcon and the Winter Soldier. And this is really the biggest mistake of Marvel post-Endgame.
The Disney Plus shows.
I am on record as being a day one hater of the idea of the Disney Plus streaming shows being directly tied to the movies. It's an extremely stupid idea that anyone with any sense at Marvel should have realized and talked Lord Kevin Feige down on, except he's surrounded by yes men who let him run around scheduling 10 different projects every year and overworking the VFX departments until they pass out from exhaustion while paying them minimum wage. If we have to get the Disney Plus shows, they should at least be used as little bonus stories where we see the heroes taking on villains of the week and they leave the important stories for the movies. Because that's what the MCU is. The Marvel Cinematic Universe. It's obvious that not everyone is going to watch all these shows. I mean, I was the biggest fan of the MCU during phases 1, 2, and 3, and even I haven't watched anything after Hawkeye, which, you know, was decent. I cannot believe a script was written that focuses on Sam Wilson coming to terms with the significance and the responsibility of becoming Captain America, what it means to follow in Steve Rogers' footsteps, what it's like for Bucky to see Steve's legacy live on through the right person, and then they added a bunch of filler to pad out the runtime so it was long enough to be a 6-episode miniseries. And then 4 years later released an actual movie in theaters, and it's this. They really treated the show like it's the first movie of the Sam Wilson Captain America movies, and then Brave New World is like the sequel to the show. But the thing about the streaming show is that not everyone is going to watch it. In all honesty, the shows don't matter. When looking at the legacy of the MCU franchise, people will be looking at all the movies that were released, and this will be what Sam Wilson's Captain America will be known for. Instead of this, the Falcon and the Winter Soldier show actually felt really cinematic and used its budget to its advantage. It's actually pretty impressive how good this show looks. The shots actually have meaning, and then the movie looks like a straight to Disney Plus special with no budget, minimal planning, no passion. The whole movie is really just untapped potential, especially with Isaiah Bradley, who the movie barely introduces. Do you really think everyone that goes to see this movie knows who this guy is? I genuinely think understanding who this character is would be so confusing without seeing the show first. Isaiah Bradley is such an interesting character that they do nothing with in this movie. Red Hulk is another missed opportunity. The idea of Thunderbolt Ross becoming the President of the United States and then eventually turning into Red Hulk is one that I wouldn't be opposed to exploring. But in this movie, they don't build it up at all, and then as soon as it happens, the whole story is over, and it feels very... I see people who don't like this movie saying that, well, at least the Red Hulk fight was good. Are you serious? Is this what we're going to accept as good now? Never mind the fact that it looks like complete... The scene doesn't mean anything. Nothing is earned. Why do you care about the events taking place in this scene? They also completely wasted bringing back Tim Blake Nelson, a super interesting actor that has nothing to work with here. There seems to be a pattern here. You see, they also bring in Gustavo Fring to play the same character he always plays, and all of this seems so forced. Well, probably because they were literally forced into the movie last second. Gosh darn, this movie stinks. Even Kevin Feige knows he's washed. You can tell he just wants this movie's release to come and go so everyone can forget this movie exists. I sure hope I do. Other things that bothered me about this movie are the fact that Bucky isn't a main character. He's a main character in this franchise with a major role in all 3 of the first movies, and he's reduced to a cameo in this that is bafflingly stupid. So Bucky goes to see Sam, who is desperately trying to free his friend who has been mind-controlled in the exact same way that Bucky was, and Bucky's just like, well, good luck with that, buddy. I gotta run, though. Wouldn't Bucky drop everything to help Sam? Also, Bucky is the one who introduced Isaiah to Sam. Did the movie forget this? Probably, because it was in the streaming show, and that doesn't matter. So, what I really wanted to say in this video is what I think they should have done with the characters of Sam Wilson and Bucky Barnes after Cap gave his shield to Sam at the end of Endgame. So this is basically what I would have done for the first Captain America movie, starring Anthony Mackie as Sam Wilson. And I honestly think the story from the show is a pretty good story that could work very well as the story for Sam Wilson's first movie. The show shouldn't have existed. The show should have been a movie called Captain America, and then the subtitle can be whatever. And even though Sam doesn't officially become Captain America until the end of the movie, it's still called Captain America, and everyone understands we are talking about Sam Wilson because literally everyone on Earth saw the end of Endgame, where Sam takes his shield. Also, Bucky is still heavily featured with his own arc because, again, he is a character that's been in every movie in this franchise. It makes sense to follow. The story can basically be the same as the show, but with all the bad parts taken out and the good parts amplified. It would start out the exact same way with Sam not thinking he's worthy of the shield, so he donates it. And then we also follow Bucky going to therapy, trying to fit into everyday life, trying to forgive himself for his past, all that good character stuff. We get introduced to Sam's sister and his nephews because I love how the show finally gave us more information about who he is outside of being Falcon. So putting a lot of focus on these two characters and letting us know a little bit more about them outside of them just being these heroes, which is something the actual movie does not do at all. I would keep John Walker because I love John Walker as a character. In the show, he's very fun to hate watch, and I think what they did with his character is very interesting. But he can't be the main antagonist because he's got to be out there trying to fight the same bad guys as Sam and Bucky, so he looks stupid by comparison. Now, the runtime of the show is about 5.5 hours, which is ridiculous because why even make it a show when you can easily cut 3 hours of filler out of this thing, right? I think it's possible. So to cut out a bunch of the 5.5 hour runtime of the show, I would just get rid of Zemo, Sharon Carter, and the Wakandans because for the most part, they can be taken out and the main story doesn't get affected at all. You could take Isaiah out too, but his story is really interesting, so I would try to fit it in, and if it doesn't, then maybe save it for the sequel. And the sequel is not going to be anything like Brave New World. Because remember, this movie is what? It's ass! That's right! I feel like the show sets up some really interesting conflicts for both Sam and Bucky in the first episode, and then kind of drops them entirely until the finale, so I would hope that the movie would dive a little deeper into these conflicts and really flesh out the character growths. I just want the script to be more character-driven than plot-driven. Now, since this is my fantasy land where I'm choosing what this movie is, I would also say that the movie doesn't only need a good script, it needs a proper production schedule with planning and a passionate crew and a visionary director, and we're looking at a stone-cold masterpiece in comic book movie cinema right here. Please step down, Kevin Feige. Let's get you to bed. Let's get you to bed. You've been producing movies at a rate much too fast to sustain. I think for the most part, people tend to think of the first 3 phases of Marvel, aka the Infinity Saga, as being some incredibly meticulously thought out plan from start to finish. And really, that wasn't ever the case. No one knew how big these movies were going to get, even Kevin Feige, and things were changed based off of what worked and what didn't. And for the most part, Feige did a really good job of maintaining a good balance of quality and quantity. But ever since Endgame, Marvel has ramped up the production quantity, which has greatly diminished the level of quality that these movies have. Even the MCU's biggest defender cannot genuinely believe that these movies look as good as these movies. There's just no way. First 3 phases of Marvel, where this era of Marvel succeeded was there was always something that they were building towards. Phase 1 introduced all the main characters in each movie and built up a team-up movie in the Avengers. Phase 2 continued to develop the main characters and built up the Infinity Stones. Phase 3 continued to develop the main characters and introduce more characters that would eventually lead into the culmination of all 3 phases with Infinity War and Endgame. Phase 4 starts off with a movie that takes place in Phase 3. Then they introduce some new characters and they set up multiple different plot points. Each movie sets up something else and none of them have been paid off, and none of them have even a future payoff in sight. Then the phase just randomly ends. Phase 5 starts with the worst movie I've ever seen and then ends with a movie that's even worse than that. Not cinema. Now we have Captain America, and there still seems to be no clear thing that everything is building towards.
Not a great plan.
Obviously, the next Avengers movie is Doomsday, but none of these movies have done anything to lead into that. This movie comes out next year. So yeah, Marvel lost its step, and it's sad because it was a big part of my life growing up, but it's honestly not that big of a deal. We'll always have the Infinity Saga, and there are so many other better movies coming out every year. Marvel can be dog shit, and I can just enjoy other movies. That being said, as a fan of movies, I do want to see the biggest franchise in history have a little pride in the movies they release. We deserve that at least. Well, that's my rambling about the Captain America franchise and the state of the MCU and Kevin Feige and cinema. Let me know what you guys thought of the movie, if you agree with me that the show had a much better story for a Sam Wilson Captain America than Brave New World did. As always, like, comment, subscribe. Check out my link in the description for my shop if you want to support the channel and wear cool clothing. That's all I have for you. Thank you so much for watching. Goodbye.